I'm Janine Nodder, and this is Chatting with Janine. The topic this week is shared parenting, and my guest is Dr. Debra Childs, who is the co-founder and executive director of a nonprofit called Time to Put Kids First. So welcome, Dr. Childs.
Thank you so much.
Are you related to Julia?
No.
No, okay.
That's Julia Child.
Yeah. Oh, you have an S on the end. Okay.
Yes.
So tell me, shared parenting and co-parenting. It sounds kind of obvious that it's two parents that share custody of their child, but can you expound on that?
Of course. So a lot of people do get confused at what shared parenting actually is, because when two parents go into family court, there's two types of custody. There's the physical aspect, physical custody, and then there's legal custody. Physical custody is actually the parenting time, the time a child has with each parent. And then legal custody is the decision making. What school do they go to? What religion are they going to be raised with? Medical decision making. Shared parenting, instead of the, one parent is a custodial parent and the other parent has like an every other weekend scenario, shared parenting instead says both parents are equally important to a child's life and upbringing. So if you can avoid family court, that's ideal. But if you can't, you want to strive for a shared parenting scenario where both parents have essentially equal parenting time and equal decision making.
So when I was a kid, one of my favorite movies was The Parent Trap with Haley Mills. It was a Disney movie, and in it, there were twins. They went to camp and they met, and they talked about a 6-month split. I'm like, and even as a kid, I wondered, well, how's that going to work? Because you have school. School gets in the way. How does do they do a 6-month split?
There are all different types of different scenarios, which is why we try to say, let's have shared parenting and co-parenting. So shared parenting, you can have shared parenting without talking to your co-parent. Some people are confused about that, thinking, oh, you have to have a great relationship. There are many families that have shared parenting. They can have equal time and decision making, and maybe their communication is over email, or maybe they have a mediator, another family member or a friend who gets involved to help with the communication. But when you can have shared parenting with co-parenting, then you have two parents who are collaborating and working together to raise their parents.
Right.
To raise their children. And it reduces the conflict and the fighting. So it's not about, oh, you had your time this week already, it's my time now. You can be more flexible, you can set up different parenting schedules, and there's a bunch of different scenarios. We have some on our website at timetoPutKidsFirst.org that shows different parenting schedules that will work for families. But if you can work together, then the nitpicking on time isn't as important, and you can work around like breastfeeding newborns, or geographical distance, or different schools, or athletics and different activities. Parents can work together to figure out what's best for their child and their family.
So who's in opposition to shared parenting?
There are essentially 3 groups. So I'll talk about the groups and then talk about what their opposition is. So first group is pretty much the Bar Association, lawyers and judges. Second one is feminist organizations, and specifically some domestic violence organizations. And then the third, as strange as it may sound, are actually activists. I say opposition, but it's more the barriers that prevent us from making progress. So first, the Bar Association, lawyers and judges, I'm not saying that there's this mass corruption, but there has been this status quo for many years. Historically, it's men who are the ones who lose their rights in family court. Men
always get a bad rap.
Yeah, I think more and more it's happening to mothers too. So that's why we're about shared parenting. Both parents are equal. We don't want anyone to be above the other, because children really do need their mother and their father. But with the family, let me actually start with an example. I went to law school after my granddaughter was taken. I went to law school because I was trying to understand how the family court worked. And I became president of an organization for my college, and I went to Washington, D.C. for a week-long event. It was law students with judges and lawyers and retired judges and lawyers. So it was a networking opportunity, educational opportunity. And every judge and lawyer I met was asking, oh, so what area of law are you interested in? And I would say, I'm interested in family law. And they would all say, every one of them would say, that's great. That's where you're going to make the money, because parents will spend everything they have to win in family court. And so then I'd say, no, I want to reform family law. And they'd be like, why would you want to do that? It's just a business.
Oh,
and
gosh, we're talking about families and people and kids.
Exactly, exactly. So it is a moneymaker. Family law is a moneymaker. And you know, there are federal incentives which incentivize breaking up the families, and every state gets federal incentives. So the second group, feminist organizations and domestic violence organizations specifically, I'm thinking this is going to change. Now that mothers are getting impacted more and more, I think those groups may start to come on board with, you know, encouraging shared parenting. But historically, because mothers have won primary custody in family court, these groups will come out and you know, suggest that it should stay this way. Now, it's kind of contradictory, because in one regard, mothers are more commonly known to abuse, well, statistically, not commonly known. Mothers statistically abuse children more often than fathers abuse children. Yeah, so it's not commonly known.
I didn't know that.
Right, and so one reason is because there are more single mothers than there are single fathers. So, you know, it brings up the percentage of chance. But also, lots of times when these domestic violence advocates and these feminist advocates come and testify against legislation for shared parenting, they'll say it's all about the protection of women and children. But there's so many things that contradict that. Number one, if a male, for example, if a father is an abuser, he shouldn't be getting, you know, either any right, or at least not unsupervised rights to a child, either parent, male or female. So they're saying it's okay for an abusive parent to have every other weekend and maybe Tuesday dinners, but not to have 50-50. So that kind of defeats that whole point. And then also, we know the negative impact of children raised in single parent families, and you know, one of them is the you know, abuse. The children are more apt to be abused as children, and they're more apt to be abused later in life as well. So I'm hoping things start to turn. I am certainly not happy that, you know, women are being impacted by this as well. I wish, you know, we could just have shared parenting. But then the third group I wanted to talk about, I say opposition, but again, it's what is preventing us from getting shared parenting, because there are, you know, organizations, activists all across the country that for more than 30 years we've been fighting to get shared parenting legislation. But we have these activists that actually work against the cause, because they come in, maybe they're impacted, maybe they're not, maybe they learn just a little bit of information, maybe they learn about the federal incentives, or they read a couple cases, Troxel v. Granville, Brown v. Board of Education, and they know a little bit of information, and then they come in and they think they're going to be the hero. They're going to be the Martin Luther King of the parental rights movement, and they're going to solve everything. They don't take the time to learn from those of us who have been in this for, you know, years and years. They don't take the time to learn both sides of a story, and they come in the most highly visible, dramatic, and destructive way, and take away from the seriousness of our cause. To some extent, making us all look crazy that we're, you know, we're advocating for shared parenting. But that is the third group that has stopped us from making progress, and it's unfortunate.
Now, earlier you said that your granddaughter was taken. She was kidnapped, and did you get her back?
Yes, and early on, because my son and I, after my granddaughter was taken, my son and I started Time to Put Kids First, and back in 2014. And initially, when we started out, we did think it was just a father's rights issue. So he had started a father's rights nonprofit, but then we quickly learned that it wasn't just a father's rights issue. So we started the organization, and just to show how prevalent the issue is, within 3 months we had reached every state in the United States and 45 countries. We're now in 66 countries.
And you too started that.
Yes,
amazing.
yeah, and I don't speak so much outwardly about my personal story because it's now more of my son and my daughter-in-law and granddaughter's personal story. But I will say that after years of ugliness, my my son is now married to the mother of his daughter. My granddaughter just turned 10. Yes, and so they have a happy ending.
Happy ending.
And it's not that's not what we're saying is going to be, going to happen with shared parenting and co-parenting. Ideally, we're just getting parents to work together, but it was the best outcome possible, what happened in my son's situation.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome.
And my son and who is co-founder, my daughter-in-law and my granddaughter still volunteer for the nonprofit too.
Yeah, so how do people find you?
So we have a website, timetoputkidsfirst.org. We were hit pretty bad with COVID. We had a lot of volunteers. We had a presence in almost every state, volunteers on the ground in almost every state and in several countries. COVID hit us hard and we haven't been able to build back up that volunteerism that we had pre-COVID, unfortunately. We were in the process of putting all of our educational programs online. We had done filming with our co-parenting class. We were probably 75% there, and we haven't been able to pick all of that up and finish. So we do still get out there. We, some volunteers will go and testify for legislation for shared parenting and related legislation. We participate in parades. This will be our 10th year in the Portsmouth, New Hampshire Christmas parade. Time to Put Kids First, having a presence there. People can find us online. Word of mouth is probably the greatest way we've spread here in New Hampshire. But we've helped over 120,000 families since 2014. So
that's amazing. So you offer classes. What's the first step? So if like somebody's watching the show and says, "Oh, I wonder if they can help me in my situation," they go to your website, and then what happens?
Yep, on our website. We also have social media presence as well. So we have volunteers who are checking our social media mailboxes, but probably the best way is to go to timetoputkidsfirst.org. There's a contact form there where you can reach out. There's ways to donate, there's ways to sign up to volunteer, different ways to get involved, and then if you need assistance, there's you can find that form on our website.
Wow. So a lot of benefits to shared parenting.
Yes, a lot of benefits. I think most people at least know at a high level the negative impacts of single parent homes. High school dropouts, teen pregnancy, drugs, alcohol, behavior issues, emotional issues. So with shared parenting, on the flip side, we're trying to, if you can have shared parenting, both parents involved in a child's life, you're either removing all of those risk factors or at least reducing them from those risk factors, but also there's so many other benefits as well. When you go into a family court scenario, a judge, there's less judicial discretion because and more consistency because a judge is saying it's shared parenting now. They're not having you walk in as separating and divorcing parents and then they're judging you and saying which one is more fit than the other, which is going to be the custodial parent and which is not. Instead, you're walking in as equals as it should be, and there's more consistency. So if you walk in to see one judge, somebody else walks in to see another judge, there's going to be more consistent outcomes. And then for parents, there's less conflict. It's easier for them. It'll also reduce, perjury, which often happens in family court, false allegations, things like that. And then for a child, you're getting both parents, and it's going to mirror what, closer to what you had before the divorce. So often when there's a divorce, kids blame themselves.
Oh,
and
that's sad.
When they blame themselves, of course, if now these parents go into family court and now they're going to see one parent less than the other, maybe every other weekend, how can you tell that child that it's not their fault when they're being punished on a regular basis? So instead, you have shared parenting and co-parenting where parents are working together. There's no, the importance of time. A lot of people talk about, well, it's quality. You have every other weekend, just make that quality time. it's hard to be a parent when you only have your child every other weekend. So, you know, what we created in the 1980s was like the Disneyland parent, or we called it the Disneyland dad because dads were impacted more.
And they end up spoiling them, I think,
Exactly.
because they only see them, you know, for a
Exactly.
short time.
Yeah, when you only have
It's hard to
them,
discipline because you don't want any negative interaction with them.
Exactly, but and it's shown because now we have decades of data, and we have surveys where we've asked kids of divorce, what would you want? And overwhelmingly, kids of divorce want shared parenting. And it also helps to maintain and keep the relationship, a positive relationship with both parents when you're young and when you're older.
Mm-hmm. So you give speeches on how does that work? I mean,
it's been a while. So
yeah.
I for a few years, especially 2014 to 2017, 18, I was going traveling to different states and going and giving speeches, going to events and facilitating events, and certainly giving testimony on behalf of shared parenting. But I haven't been doing that as much lately. I took another job to help in another capacity.
You have several jobs.
I do have several jobs.
In fact, I don't think there's anything you can't do.
But it's been a while. I do have a few presentations coming up, so I just have to, I'm a little bit rusty, but yeah, get back into it. So I'm super encouraged by state of New Hampshire, just in the House and Senate, passed HB 185. So we have passed, waiting on the, you know, pending the governor's signature, shared parenting finally. So it's a little bit watered down. It basically changes our law where it says parents will have frequent and continuing contact. They changed that to approximately equal. So this is huge for us. So
what's the difference?
Well, frequent and continuing, what does that mean? It's so vague. So it's hard to say, and especially since we've had this precedent over years where judges have awarded one parent primary custody and another every other weekend, that could be frequent and continuing. So instead we're saying approximately equal. So it's more shared parenting, and it's more equal.
Was this the sponsor? Was it Lisa?
Yeah,
Post?
Representative Lisa Post.
Okay,
yeah.
She's in I don't know what town she lives in. I want to say Hollis, Milford. It's somewhere close by.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah.
Sorry, Representative.
I know. And how many times has this bill gone through? Or
oh my goodness.
How many times have we tried? I know I remember this bill coming up before on previous terms.
We in New Hampshire have been fighting for shared parenting for more than 30 years. I mean, you might have heard of the case in the 1990s of Thomas Ball, who lost his parental rights. He dumped gasoline on himself and burned himself on the courthouse steps. This issue has been around for a long time. I mean, I've been working with legislators on this for many years.
I remember when I was a freshman, there was a man in town. He would call me all the time and, you know, telling me his story about it, you know, trying to get his daughter. And I was a freshman. I didn't know how to help him. See, now I could refer people to your website, and you know, so I could do that now. But yeah, it was very strange. I would ask the other reps who'd been there a whole lot longer. I said, well, what do I tell this man? He said, well, he needs to get a lawyer. I'm like, he wants me to go sit in court with him. I'm like, is that part? Are we supposed to do that?
It's so tough. So back then the issue was complicated, but now it's even more complicated, and we have this, you know, generation after generation of separation divorce where which has created or at least exacerbated a lot of our social issues. You know, we have an opioid crisis, increased crime. We have all of these issues and complex family systems. So, you know, grandparents raising their grandkids, you know, parents in prison.
I was going to ask you about grandparents. Do you deal with that as well?
We do. Anybody can come to us. In fact, so we have these co-parenting classes, and we've actually had married couples come to our co-parenting class.
Where do you go to for these classes?
We've worked with different nonprofits across the country. Here in New Hampshire, we worked with Families First in Portsmouth. We've done our co-parenting classes there. We've done it at the Dover Public Library.
Okay, anything in this area, Merrimack?
Not yet, not yet. Again, we were hit by COVID, so we were working on this Train the Trainer program so we could spread out the in-person classes, and then we were working on an online parenting class. We had finished about 75% of the recording. We had, people coming in, actors and actresses doing the scripts for our course, and we were almost there, and that's been unfortunately sitting since 2020. We stopped our filming in February of 2020.
But you're going to get it back.
Yes.
Yes. So tell me about a class. What do you do? Do you do like basics, like a new parent, teach them how to change diapers and that kind of stuff?
No, we don't have anything like that because it's more, we don't want to duplicate anything that's already out there. So it's not just parenting, it's about how do you work through like conflict resolution, negotiation. So it's more for separated and divorcing parents. How are you going to work together when you're having a hard time? How do you put your child first and set your differences aside? So we have a co-parenting course, which we have had, like I said, married parents attend, aunts and uncles, friends attend, because they want to know how can we help support the children in our lives that we love. So,
do you go over things like allowance, chores, homework?
To some extent, I guess to the extent that parents, sometimes when you divorce is because you're so different. You may have different parenting styles, different disciplinary actions, and so we may talk about how you can kind of work together, or at least be respectful of each other's differences. So when you have your children and you're disciplining, you're making sure you're clear, this is how I discipline, this is how mom or dad disciplines. So yeah, we do talk about things like that.
And rewards, like if the child does a good thing, what is a proper reward and what is just too much. Like, no, you don't get a new bedroom set because you did your homework.
Well, that's one of the challenges with separation and divorce. You might have one parent who spoils with material things, and you have to know how to do that without, of course, bad-mouthing the other parent, because you never want to do that. But you're not always going to agree with, even when you're married, you don't always agree with the parenting decisions that your spouse may make. But when you're separated and divorced, it gets a little more challenging.
Well, I know
we can touch on it, but again, we're all about parental rights and working together and figuring out how to work together. So if you can have those conversations. So if you're spoiling with material things, we can have that conversation on, is there somewhere in the middle that we can meet on our parenting styles?
Mm-hmm. I forgot what I was going to ask you. Do pets ever come into this conversation?
Yes.
Let's talk about the pets.
Well, we have, like, sometimes a parent will come to us and say, this parent bought a pet for Johnny because they want to get Johnny's love and attention and want Johnny to go with, want to be with that parent because of the pet. But we try to get parents working together and talking with each other, and pets can be a wonderful and positive thing, but certainly no pet or material thing should be used to try to get your child's love and attention. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. I went through my list of questions, so what have we not touched on?
It's such a broad and complex issue, but I guess, so are we wrapping up?
Whatever else we want to add.
Okay, because I guess one thing I would want to emphasize is that everybody can make a difference in this area of separation, divorce, and child custody, because even if you are not impacted, you don't have children, you are likely impacted in some way. If it's not your children, if it's not your grandchildren, if it's not a friend or family member who's gone through separation or divorce, you are at least impacted by the societal issues that exist because of separation and divorce. So what I would suggest is to always put children first. Don't pick sides. Maybe your friend is going through a divorce and she has all kinds of things to say negatively about her ex, or he has all kinds of things negatively to say about his ex.
And that's the worst thing you can do. You should never put down the other parent in front of the kid.
Yeah, if you have to vent separately, but even when you're venting, if you have this negative feeling, you know, kids pick up on things. So try to help, you know, whether it's a parent, a grandparent, a friend, help them to figure out how to put their kids first, because kids blame themselves, kids love both of their parents, and really you can do a lot of things to help raise your children right. You want to feed them vegetables, you want to have them educated, you want to get them involved in, you know, athletics, because that's a great thing. But the best thing you can do for a child who is experiencing separation, divorce, and going through a child custody issue is to encourage and maintain both parents in their lives and extended family members. When there is a divorce or separation, a child should not lose a parent, a child should not lose grandparents, they shouldn't lose family or friends. They should always be able to maintain those relationships.
I remember when my kids were little, I remember being told grandparents have a right to see their grandchildren.
Yes.
And like, you know, and sometimes it's hard, you know, to make time for that, but they do have a right to see them.
Yeah.
And now that I'm a grandparent, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, yeah, I can't imagine. It's, yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Childs.
Thank you.
I'll look for your speeches. I would like to attend one if I can. So I think there's a lot to benefit from hearing what you have to say.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Time to put kids first. Thank you so much for watching.